Hello, this is Steven, and yes, we're back with another Green Hornet 66 episode review, and today we'll be reviewing the episode An Ace in the Hole. So without any further ado, let's hop straight to the review. On a very dark night, the Black Beauty rolls up at some swank mansion and is invited in. We then see that there are two gangsters pretty much squabbling on the idea of having Green Hornet, to join their operation. But one says, would you rather have him, be trouble than him looking for trouble? As the two are let in, Kato ends up, getting into a fight with two of the henchmen because they try to frisk. Realizing that one of the gangsters is now convinced why they need him, he agrees, but he also asks that that's all they need. All the muscle go outside. Just as that's happening, they're about to discuss plans, but however are quickly interrupted when the henchmen bring in some guy who was snooping outside. When they have a look at his face, turns out to be none other than Mike Axford, a reporter for the Sentinel. Even though the Green Hornet offers to get rid of him, they said the leading gangster, a man by the name of Trevor, says, no, this is my business, I'll do it. Steve then said, no way, it should be done right. Already a quabble's about to start, but the Green Hornet breaks it off, says, we're going to work together, let's do it right now. They agree. All the muscle are kind of asked just to go away for a while. The Green Hornet then comes back with a deck of cards and agrees that whoever draws the highest card takes care of Axford. They agree. Steve's to go and gets 10. Trevor then draws and gets king. Green Hornet then picks and gets an ace. And they agree that Axford's all his. By this point, Mike Axford is waking up and sees all three. He's about to make a run for it, where Trevor gets his gun out. The Green Hornet then slightly knocks the gun to the side whilst taking it out of Trevor's hand, but at the same time, firing goes off. Axford then falls through essentially a glass door. When Steve says, when Trevor says, why did you do that? He said, because taking care of Axford was his job. Kato then comes and tries to listen to Mike's pulse and says he's dead. They agree they've done one business for the night, but same time, same place tomorrow night, when they take Axford away. We do the opening montage until we're back in the Daily Sentinel, where the newspaper reports of Mike Axford being feared dead. Britt Reed has in his possession, however, an affidavit for the possible murder until it can be verified by Frank Scanlon. By the time, Case is saying that, believing that Mike Axford is dead, we have a little transition shot from the newspaper to Britt Reed's apartment, where Frank Scanlon is finished reading the newspaper. He said, why not see the affidavit? Why wait? And Britt Reed said there isn't one. It's like, what, we got no lead? He says, not exactly. He then turns to a TV camera that was secretly, in the room. It's pretty much his TV, but when you turn to a certain setting, you can see a camera, and it's revealed that Mike Axford is actually alive, despite the fact the paper said he's dead. Britt Reed then says, no, it's for these two gangsters to think so. And Frank Scanlon's confused. He then explains to Frank that these two gangsters are teaming up, and they asked the Green Hornet to join. And Mike Axford happened to stumble in on a meeting, no doubt trying to catch a story. Franklin can't believe the idea that those two be teaming up, as judging by dialogue, the two have been pretty much at war or at each other's throats for years. But now, apparently according to Britt, they're after him. And with that succeeding, they'll have this town in their pocket. Realizing there's no other alternative, they plan to set a little trap to get him out in the open and expose them once and for all. And they go along with the plan. Later that night, Steve and one of his boys are about to leave the apartment for the meeting, but apparently they're running late. Whilst they're not looking, the Green Hornet gasses them, puts them in the car in order to delay him. We then transition from that back to Trevor's place, where he reads the newspaper. He then believes that Steve is the one that gave the affidavit to Reed about the whole thing. Green Hornet plays it dumb and says he might be jumping to a conclusion, but he says, really? Then where is he? Why is he not at this meeting? Green Hornet can't think of a reason, but however, Trevor thinks he could think of some pretty bad ones. He says, would you like me to take care of him? He says, no, Steve will be my pleasure. I'll take care of him. So you say. And just as they drive off in the Black Beauty, they end up cutting off Steve, who is on his way to the meeting. Steve is first furious at why he did it, but he explains, have you read the papers? He believes you gave that affidavit, and now is gunning for you. He realized that this deal, is over before it even began. But Green Hornet suggests an idea if they go to Britt Reed's place, and get some evidence, or hell, get the affidavit, then Nick could prove it wasn't him. Steve likes the idea. Then he turns to his boy to think could they be able to get away with it. He says, all we can do is try. As a result, the two go off to Britt Reed's place, with the Green Hornet quickly going back to obviously watch the whole thing unfold. Setting up the camera just at the right spot, the two gangsters break in, whilst being spied on a survey camera by Britt Reed. The two see the Mike Axford alive, and Steve thinks that maybe Green Hornet's the one that's setting up the whole thing. But one of the henchmen asks them, why would he bother sending us here then? He has a point. As a result, they hear Kato come down and pick up the phone whilst they're hiding, and hearing essentially how Mike Axford's saying he's fine, but he also hears that there's a strange car parked on the street and plans to get the license plate. The two gangsters quickly run out, sneakily, clear to report this back to Trevor. The Green Hornet's plan is working. At least I think so. Whilst they're on the drive to Steve's place, he ends up getting Casey a call saying Mike Axford's alive, and they're dropping him back at his place. Casey is furious about being left in the dark, and plans to, and basically... So anyway, Casey's furious essentially that she didn't know was left in the dark. When Britt Reed says that to Kato, just as they're delivering Mike Axford back to his apartment, Kato says the line, if she's furious, wait until Trevor hears about it. We then ironically cut to Steve at Trevor's place explaining the whole thing. Trevor is skeptical about the whole thing and says, are you sure about what you saw? He then says, would I be stupid enough to lie? Then says, if that's the case, then why would it happen? To split, and Steve said, maybe to split us up. Green Hornet then comes in sneakily saying, isn't that what you're trying to do, Gan? And Kato throws his trademark dart at one of the henchmen, blocking him from taking his gun. We haven't seen that in a while, so it's nice that they brought that back. Essentially, Steve then goes up to Steve and says, this is no way this could be happening unless Trevor now believes in ghosts. He says he doesn't know. Steve says, but I did see him alive. He said, where? At Reed's. Green Hornet said, okay then, let's all go to Reed's, and everyone agrees on it. We then have a scene where essentially where Mike Axford is now up and phones Casey and doesn't remember everything, but he's under strict orders to not leave the apartment, even though Mike says he has a story that needs, just can't wait, but he says he has orders and stay put. We then see Steve, Trevor, pretty much going all over the Reed's place to find Axford, but not there. But Steve said he was here. He was on the TV. When Green Hornet says if that's the case, he still must be there. They go to turn on the TV, and we get a little gag of seeing a clip of the Batman 66 TV show. It's a nice little gag, and I think it was helped to promote the show on this one, but at the same time, it was an inside joke because the show was produced by the same guy who also did this show along with the Batman 66 show. And I just love that little gag, and it does give me a little bit of a smile. But we then come back to Mike, who wakes up and goes across to his next door neighbor to ask for some smokes. Ironically, the neighbor is being played by the same, I guess, I'm not sure it was caretaker or actually, correction, was a repairman who appeared in the season 3 episode of I think it was Louis Lilac's Lilac Time episode thing. We kidnap Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, and as Batgirl was, Barbara was about to change the Batgirl, he was in the apartment, played by the same guy. And this is where he's revealed apparently he's been feared dead. Mike gets the hands on the story and is furious and essentially is heading over to Britt Reed's place. Doesn't sound good. Realizing that, they then go downstairs to a locked door cellar where the two henchmen of Steve and Trevor essentially are trying to bust down the door. But the two aren't getting anywhere. Green Hornet then looks at Kato and says, would you like to do the honors? Kato then does. I like how I think it was like one kick didn't do anything, and the two kind of cracked a smile. But the third time, it did some real damage to the door. Then the third time, it opened. Bruce Lee is just awesome, and I just love that scene where the thugs were thought, he's not going to open it. Then he does, just within 3 kicks. Just as they get in, they see that Mike Axford is not there, but they recognize the room that's where he was in. Trevor has fed up and, essentially said that Steve's out. Way out. Just as they go back upstairs, we get a scene where Mike Axford calls for a cab and is heading to Britt Reed's place. We then cut to a nice little scene where essentially Steve's getting beaten by Trevor's henchman, while Trevor is holding his own henchman at hostage at gunpoint. It's a nice little funny gag scene with him getting beaten up with a nice little jazz music. The Green Hornet then looks at his painting and uses his Hornet sting on very low sting to knock the painting off. I'm surprised no one heard it go off, but hey, but then again didn't use that full power. He then notices the safe and tells everyone to stop, bring him to the safe, and says, "You thinking what I'm thinking? That the affidavit might be in there." Trevor agrees and says, "Everyone stand back." He then uses the Hornet sting to burst the safe open, and they go through the files. When Green Hornet says, "I found it," Trevor immediately rips out of his hand wanting to find out who signed it, and he looks at it, finding out that it's his name on it. He is dumbfounded. Green Hornet just wants to know who signed it, where Steve takes out of Trevor's hands and finds out that Trevor signed it. This is where the tension and pretty much the partnership is completely falling into turmoil, and a fight breaks out between Steve and Trevor punching each other in the face, and the henchmen join in punching themselves in the face, while the Green Hornet and Kato just watch on harmlessly. I'm just loving the funny comedic moment here. Ironically, around this point, Mike Axford has secretly come in and is secretly behind a curtain. As the fight breaks out, one henchman manages to duck, whilst ducks one of the henchmen, and one henchman's hand go through the curtain, essentially knocking Mike out. One of the henchmen notices that it's Mike, and they can't believe what they see. They tell their bosses to stop and bring him over. Realizing that Mike ain't dead, he's knocked out. Steve realized the double cross. So, if it wasn't Trevor, and it certainly wasn't Steve, that leaves only one other person to set this whole thing up, and everyone looks at the Green Hornet. That Green Hornet and about to round on him. However, the two end up knocking them out. The Green Hornet knocks out the bosses, and Kato takes out the henchmen. We then get a scene where essentially they're on the drive back saying how they've given an extra dose of Hornet gas for knocked out. Mike has notes on the whole thing, enough to make the charges stick for them to be arrested. And Mike, well, he's knocked out, but he'll be alright. We end the episode at Britt Reed's office, where Mike comes in, still can't believe what the hell's going on with the story, and tries to make sense of it after drinking several cups of coffee, but nothing makes sense. It's a nice, funny, comedic moment, and we end the episode there. Okay, first off, the fact that an episode is surrounded by Mike Axford makes a lot of sense, because he's arguably one of the most best reoccurring and great for comedic moments and most certainly serious moment. Frank Scanlon and Casey are kind of really not used that much and are coming, I'm sad to say, more in the realms of Kato being too much of background characters and nothing more. And again, Green Hornet, great as always. I do like the fact for this episode, it's how, the Green Hornet is really trying to play these two gangsters against each other for his own benefit. It's a very devilish move, and I do feel, however, that even though that's the premise, I do love the fact that it's back to traditional fact that, it's the Green Hornet meddling in, gangsters' affairs. Something I think we haven't seen in an episode for quite a while, or either that or it just feels like we haven't done it in a really long time. The villains for these episodes are essentially two gangster characters. Again, kind of almost a premise really in the first episode, with the character of Phil Traeger, not Trevor as I've been saying throughout the episode, portrayed by Richard Anderson, a character well known for television and a lot of things, and most importantly, Steve Gant, portrayed by Richard X. Slater. Now these guys are really different type of gangsters. I see Gant as really more of a thug that really rose high in the ranks of the underworld. Trevor almost comes off as a very sophisticated and almost brilliant, suave guy. Almost like, again, almost like a reminder of the very first episode. But I do love the fact that, they are two polar opposites. But unlike the first one, where they were really rivals, were rivals and had to, team up for convenience, these guys are genuinely teaming up, both are seeing the genuine endgame. But one really has reservations with working with the Green Hornet and doesn't hide it. The other knows exactly, that, yeah, there is reservations, but I'd rather have him working with me than against me. He's trying to see the long-term picture, and if Green Hornet was a genuine, proper, known gangster racketeer, the question is, would this partnership have actually worked out beneficial for everyone in the long run? I also love the fact he's trying to, the two are getting played off each other, with the Green Hornet trying to manipulate things. And again, it shows really just how easily manipulated these guys are. Despite the fact they do view themselves as very, sophisticated criminals, in reality, they are just as easily manipulated, and it was a really great story for them to go with. Ace in the Hole, for me, is a really fun episode. What I like about it is a lot of it, especially in the latter half, does play to a bit of comedic moments. The premise here of, coming in and playing off against each other, two people off against each other, is a really fun and really inventive, thing to do. And, however, I do feel that what was their real long-term plan really should have been somehow part of the episode, but it doesn't. In many ways, I feel this episode could have worked as a two-parter, but I do like it as a standalone one-off. Again, Mike Axford being the sort of in the middle and getting caught up in all this and doesn't know, what happened is a really nice, funny moment, and I really love it for that fact. For me, it's a fun and enjoyable episode and a pure fan favorite of mine. And there we have it, that was Ace in the Hole. Tune in next time and review another episode, but until then, this has been the Green Hornet 66 TV series review. Till next time, so long for now.